What do you think money is? Seriously, you're probably picturing paper bills, metal coins, or maybe just numbers on a screen. It's the stuff that makes the world go around. What we work for, what we spend. It all seems so simple. But what if I told you the whole concept of money is basically just a story? A collective agreement that's taken some unbelievably weird turns throughout history. For most of our time on this planet, money wasn't some pocket-sized thing. It was stranger. Today, we're not just looking at old coins. We're going on a trip through forgotten financial experiments and bizarre forms of currency that will completely change how you see the cash in your wallet. We're counting down some of the most unusual money ever used, from currency that literally expires to fortunes made of cheese. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a look into the weird psychology of value.
Let's start with an idea that sounds more like a folksy warning than a real financial strategy: money made from wood. You've probably heard the phrase, "Don't take any wooden nickels," a classic American warning against scams. But in the tiny town of Tenino, Washington, taking wooden money wasn't just a good idea, it was a lifeline. The story starts in the bleakest days of the Great Depression. In December 1931, the town's only bank, the Citizens Bank of Tenino, suddenly failed. Its doors were slammed shut and the entire community's savings were frozen. People had money on paper, but they couldn't get to it. Businesses had customers, but no one had cash. The local economy was grinding to a painful halt. In a moment of sheer desperation, the local Chamber of Commerce hatched a wild plan. The publisher of the town newspaper, Don Major, suggested they print their own emergency currency, or scrip. Citizens could assign up to 25% of their frozen bank accounts to the chamber, and in return, they'd get this new, locally printed money to spend in town. At first, they just printed it on paper, but then they had an even stranger idea. The newspaper press had been messing around with printing novelty Christmas cards on super thin slices of spruce and cedar. They decided to use this slice wood to print their money. And just like that, the Tenino wooden banknote was born, in denominations of 25 cents, 50 cents, and $1. This was no joke. It was a serious financial tool that kept the town from going under. You could use these wooden bills for groceries, to pay your water bill, or to grab a meal. The plan was a runaway success, but not how they imagined. News of the wooden money spread like wildfire. Collectors became obsessed, writing to Tenino from all over the world to buy the bills as souvenirs. In the end, over $10,000 worth of wooden money was issued, but only about $40 was ever actually redeemed. The rest was kept by collectors, accidentally injecting thousands of dollars of real outside money into the town's struggling economy. And in a wild twist, when a COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, Tenino brought back its tradition. Using the exact same 1890s printing press, the town issued new wooden currency to help residents and businesses, proving that sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones that actually work.
If you think wood is a weird thing to make money from, let's go back to medieval Russia and Finland, where the economy ran on something much, much warmer: squirrel pelts. In the huge cold forests of northern Europe, fur wasn't just for keeping warm, it was a primary form of currency. For centuries, before standard coins became common in the area, the soft, durable pelt of the red squirrel was a universally accepted way to pay for things. This wasn't simple barter, it was a surprisingly sophisticated system. Tributes and rent were paid in squirrel fur. In fact, the word for money in medieval Russia, kuna, came from the word for a marten skin, a close cousin of the squirrel. And even today, the modern Finnish word for money, raha, originally meant fur. This fur-based economy even had its own denominations. A certain number of pelts had a set value. For instance, a bundle of 10 squirrel pelts was called a tikuri. At one point, you could trade about 100 pelts for a whole cow. But what about small change? You can't just rip a dollar bill in half, but you can cut up a squirrel pelt, and that's exactly what they did. For smaller payments, people used pieces of the fur, paws, ears, and even snouts, which all had their own fractional value. Think about that the next time you're digging around for a quarter. In medieval times, you might have been searching for a squirrel's nose. This system worked for centuries because fur had real, intrinsic value. It was always useful for warmth, it was pretty durable, and the supply was naturally limited by how hard it was to hunt. Eventually, as metal coins became more available, fur money was phased out. But for a long time, the wealth of a kingdom could be measured by how fluffy its treasury was.
Next, we're off to the Pacific island of Yap in Micronesia, home to what is arguably the largest and most mind-bending currency in history, rye stones. Forget everything you know about portable money. Rice stones are massive, solid limestone discs, carved in a circle with a hole in the middle. And when I say massive, I mean it. They range from a few inches across to nearly 12 feet tall, weighing more than a car. These weren't just decorations, they were actual money used for major deals like buying land, paying marriage dowries, and settling serious disputes. But here's where it gets truly strange. The limestone needed to make them doesn't exist on Yap. To get it, Yapese adventurers had to make a dangerous 300-mile ocean journey in canoes to the island of Palau, where they would quarry the stone. The value of a rice stone wasn't just its size, it was its story. How many people died trying to bring it back? How famous was the person who carved it? Each stone had an oral history, a public record of its creation and every transaction it was ever part of. Because of their immense weight, the larger rice stones were almost never moved. When a transaction happened, the stone would stay put, maybe in the middle of a forest or outside a hut. The community would just publicly agree that the ownership had changed. This is essentially a public ledger, a lot like the blockchain technology behind modern cryptocurrencies. Everyone just knew who owned what. There's a famous story about a crew transporting a huge priceless rice stone back to Yap when a storm hit, sinking the stone to the bottom of the ocean. The crew survived and told everyone what happened. The community decided that since everyone knew the stone was there and who it belonged to, it was still perfectly good currency. It sat on the sea floor, yet it continued to be used in transactions for generations. Money, it turns out, doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be believed in. If you're finding this as fascinating as I am and your whole idea of wealth is being turned upside down, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We explore historical oddities like this all the time, and you won't want to miss what we find next.
Imagine a dollar bill that loses value every single week you keep it. It sounds like a financial nightmare, but during the Great Depression, this was a real experiment known as stamp script. The idea was created to solve a very specific problem: hoarding. In the 1930s, the economy was in total freefall. People were terrified, and anyone with cash was holding on to it for dear life. But when nobody spends money, the economy stops. Businesses fail, people lose their jobs, and the whole cycle just gets worse. Enter stamp script, a type of local currency designed to force people to spend it. Here's how it worked. A town would issue its own paper notes. On the back were a bunch of empty boxes, often 52, one for each week of the year. For the note to be valid, you had to buy and stick a special stamp in that week's box. Those stamps cost money, usually a cent to two. This created a powerful reason not to hold on to your cash. If you had $1 of stamp script at the end of the week, you'd have to pay to keep it valid. It was like a game of hot potato with money. Everyone wanted to spend it as fast as possible to avoid the fee. This was based on an economic theory called demurrage, the idea that money should decay over time, just like any other product, to encourage spending. Dozens of U.S. communities tried it, but one of the most famous examples was in Wurgl, Austria. The town used the money from stamp sales to fund public works projects, and the fast-moving script helped revive the local economy during a time of massive unemployment. While these experiments were mostly short-lived, they were a fascinating attempt to use human psychology to jumpstart a dead economy. It's a strange but brilliant solution to the problem of fear.
And for our last one, we're heading to modern Italy, where some of the country's most valuable assets are sharp, nutty, and absolutely delicious. In the Emilia-Romagna region, the home of Parmigiano Reggiano, at least one bank has been accepting giant wheels of Parmesan cheese as collateral for loans since 1953. This isn't a gimmick. The regional bank Credito Emiliano, or Credem, has been doing this for decades. Making real Parmigiano Reggiano is a long, expensive process. The cheese has to age for at least 12 months and often up to 36 months before it's ready. For small, family-run cheese producers, this means their money is tied up in aging wheels of cheese for years. They have a valuable product, but zero cash flow. Credem's solution is genius. Producers bring their fresh wheels of Parmesan to the bank's special, climate-controlled warehouses. The bank's experts inspect the cheese, and then the bank issues a loan to the producer for up to 80% of the cheese's value. The cheese then ages in the bank's high-security vault, which now holds hundreds of thousands of wheels worth hundreds of millions of euros. The bank basically acts as both a financial institution and a professional cheese aging facility. It's a win-win. The producers get the cash they need to keep their business running, and the bank gets a very stable, appreciating asset as collateral. If a producer defaults, the bank can just sell the now perfectly aged cheese to get its money back. This cheese-based financial system is so effective, it's even been the subject of a Harvard Business School case study. It's a great reminder that value can be found in the most unexpected places. So what is money? As we've seen, it can be almost anything. Giant, immovable stones, slices of wood, squirrel furs, or wheels of aging cheese. For all our modern financial systems, the basic truth is the same. Money isn't really an object. It's a story. It's a shared belief in the value of something. That something could be a piece of paper, a string of code, or a block of salt that Roman soldiers were once given an allowance to buy, which is where we get the word salary. History shows that as long as we all agree on the story, anything can be money. The cash in your pocket is just the latest chapter in a long and very, very weird book. It makes you wonder what future generations will think of us when they look back. What's the strangest form of money you've ever heard of? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. And if you enjoyed this trip into the weird world of finance, make sure you're subscribed because we've only just scratched the surface. Thanks for watching.